I want to talk about Contrapoints. Contrapoints is a leftist YouTuber who I jokingly call the all-mother of leftist YouTube. So many people refer to her as having been like majorly influential and a natural result of the masterpieces that she creates. A side effect of that is that she doesn't release videos often. Well, she released a new video this weekend called Envy. And I gotta say, I do recommend it. However, if you don't watch it, I totally understand, because that video is almost 2 hours long. Not only is it really long, but it's packed with information and jokes, and for that reason, I actually watched most of it at like 1x at normal speed. I tried to plow through the end real quick, but there is a lesson in this video which I think is valuable for anyone, and I want to make sure that people who aren't willing to watch almost 2 hours of content would at least get my takeaways from it. And it actually concretely helped me this weekend. So the way Contra often starts her videos, she'll start with like anecdotes involving celebrities, and then she'll use those stories about celebrities as examples and illustrate what those represent. And the examples that she used, like the one that comes to mind is Kim Kardashian, when she celebrated her 40th birthday by going on a private island and tweeted about it while, most people were on lockdown, and people weren't happy about that, Early on in this video, she describes the difference between envy and jealousy. And I don't think that difference is very meaningful for the takeaway that I got from it, but I just want to explain real quick. So jealousy is mainly about something that you already have, and when you're trying to protect it, that can spawn feelings of jealousy. So a common example of that is when you're the oldest child, and then all of a sudden there's a new child that comes around, and now mommy and daddy aren't paying attention to you anymore. Or that's how it feels to you, that kind of thing. Whereas envy is mainly for things that you don't have, so that you want them, but you don't have them. An example of that would be, I don't know, the wealth necessary to just travel to a private island for a week with your friends and family to celebrate your 40th birthday. So I just want to clear out that, people confuse envy and jealousy a lot. And there is a difference that is relevant. However, just for the sake of this video, I'm always talking about envy. So if you hear me say jealousy, I won't correct myself, but I will have meant envy. That's always what I mean. The thing about envy is it's very difficult to tell that we're experiencing envy, because the feeling of envy, when you envy someone, it feels painful because you have to admit to yourself that you're lacking or inferior to that person in that specific regard. And that will lead to feelings of shame and guilt, because, again, admitting that you're inferior to someone who's making you mad is very painful emotionally. And also the guilt, in the sense that envy is often malicious, like the whole feeling of, if I can't have this, no one can. So when we see someone who has that thing that we want, let's say it's a Lamborghini, to see them like lose the Lamborghini and for whatever reason, kind of gives you that schadenfreude, that feeling of joy that you get from seeing other people suffer when you think that you deserve it. And yeah, the point that I'm driving at is that in this constant quest of ours to deal with the cognitive dissonance that we're almost always experiencing, We, especially once we've reached adulthood, we've become so good at it that we kind of deal with it without realizing that we even feel it, right? And that often manifests also in the form of telling yourself that you didn't want it anyway. Like the fucking legend of cognitive dissonance is that fox who can't reach the grapes, and the fox, he tells himself, "Oh, those grapes are probably sour," that kind of thing. That feeling of envy is often expedited by the proximity effect. A common example of that is how winning a silver medal often feels worse than winning bronze. This is even more true in like elimination style tournaments, but the idea is that the bronze medalist is happy to be on the podium at all, but the silver medalist keeps like wondering like what if, which is why you can get not like, I would say this is a very blatant example of the kind of stinky face that happens when you're on that podium and you're not really smiling. And I would not be surprised at all if the bronze medalist on that same podium, sitting next to or opposite from Michaela Maroney here, was fucking smiling from ear to ear, full teeth, all that shit, because, you're just happy to be there. When you have this unresolved envy, or by unresolved I mean like envy that you may not even realize that you have, because you kind of deal with it in different ways. It can be mature or not, but when you let this feeling of envy run around in your psyche, it can turn into contempt. An example of that Contrapoints uses, which is illustrated a couple ways, is the in art, the cliche or the meme of the older failed artist who sees this young up and comer who can it seems like they can fucking create art spontaneously without even trying. They're just having fun and they're making these masterful pieces of art, and the old curmudgeon, a common defense against like the feeling of envy or the shame of watching this young fuck make better art than you without even trying, when you've been fucking slaving at your craft your entire life and didn't get any recognition for it, is to channel the envious feeling of inferiority into moral superiority. And we see this all the time. I would say that this kind of thing is an example of not dealing with it in a mature way. However, it's so common, like oh, this youngin here might have done this great scene, but it broke these rules here that you really have to maintain, and therefore that's why it's inferior to what I would have done or whatever. That is one way of dealing with it, but there are more mature ways, which is a phenomenon called sublimation. Sublimation isn't just a thing that you can do with envy. You can take any negative or frowned upon emotion, and through sublimation you channel it into something more productive. Sublimation is the psychological term here. I think it's relevant to just look at the different ways that we can deal with our emotions, okay? So in psychoanalytic theory, a defense mechanism is an unconscious psychological operation that functions to protect a person from anxiety-producing thoughts and feelings related to internal conflicts and outer stressors, okay? And in psychology, there are levels with which you can deal with this, okay? Let's just skip to this one here. So level 1 is pathological, where the defenses in conjunction permit one to effectively rearrange external experiences to eliminate the need to cope with reality. So this is with things like delusion, denial, distortion. The example of the old curmudgeonly artist, I would say that this would be an example of like the pathological coping mechanism. Then you have the immature ones, which are things like acting out, passive aggressive behavior. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. I'm sure we've done it more recently than we might like to admit. And things like projection and things like that. Level 3, which is neurotic, includes things like displacement, dissociation, repressing the emotion, which, yeah, it's fine in the short term, but you might cause bigger problems later down the line. And sublimation, which I mentioned here, the transformation of unhelpful emotions or instincts into healthy actions, behaviors, or emotions. For example, playing a heavy contact sport such as football or rugby can transform aggression into a game. So that would be an example of a mature thing, like, playing football, no matter what you think of it, is more productive than picking fights in a bar, for instance. I just want to use an example of this. This happened the next day after I watched that video, actually, where I won't get into details, but I was feeling annoyed with some friends, and there wasn't much that I can do about it. So I remembered, the concept of sublimation, and then I channeled that annoyance into cleaning up the apartment. So that would be a tiny little concrete example of me having benefited from this as recently as Sunday. So there you go. So now, before we continue, I think it would be important to take a look at this lesson here, because again, this video is almost 2 hours long, but this short segment here, it deals with politics, and I think there's a lot to learn. Now, keep in mind, Contrapoints is coming at this from a leftist perspective, but this lesson is useful to anyone. It'll be clear in a second. Let's watch.
So this morality of resentment, of impotence, and permanently frustrated revenge judges that power is evil. I don't use foundation, I just use concealer. I know that's like not how you're supposed to do makeup, but I don't need to be good at makeup, okay? I have 1 million subscribers on YouTube. I don't need to be good. There was a New York Times article about young women's attitudes toward political ambition, and one of the women who was interviewed said, "As a white woman, I know I have unearned privilege. So am I really the best person to be in leadership?" Yes. Yes, you are, because we need leaders like you who are capable of questioning the legitimacy of their own authority. Otherwise, we're just gonna be stuck with another blonde beast of prey. And of course, it's good to be aware of your privilege, especially as a leader, but let's not be so self-effacing that we efface ourselves off the face of the earth. This is the self-sabotage of resentment values. If you think power is evil, then you've given up on the ambition to acquire any power, which virtually guarantees your political irrelevance.
So the whole perception of power as evil, which guarantees your political irrelevance, some of y'all might understand where this is going, but I just wanted to just before this clip, there was a Martin Luther King quote that, Jesus Christ, I forgot how amazing a speaker Martin Luther King is. I will not try to imitate him, but I will read it here because Jesus Christ is an amazing quote. So the quote is, "Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love." The takeaway from this quote is that it's great to be all hippy dippy and all, but if you don't have power, it's just like empty thoughts, which is what she was driving at when she was saying that if you see power as evil because you're maybe a little envious of the people who have it. It might be another feeling, but it's a negative feeling of in the face of power that you're kind of dealing with in by just telling yourself that it's evil, right? So that is an absolute risk. Let's continue with the clip.
Since, like MLK said, you have to at least have some power to implement the demands of justice. Remember what incels call taking the black pill, this conviction that the reason you don't have a girlfriend is just that you're genetically undesirable. There's nothing you can do to change it, and I guess women are just too shallow to be attracted to all the amazing hatred and spite that festers in your heart. For a lot of black-pilled incels, it seems like there's only one thing left in life that they enjoy, which is simply the pleasure of complaining, of moaning in pain. It reminds me of a comment from Dostoevsky's second most horrible protagonist.
Even in toothache there is enjoyment. In that case, of course, people are not spiteful in silence, but moan. But they are not candid moans, they are malignant moans, and the malignancy is the whole point.
The moan is a protest against the meaninglessness of pain, and part of the satisfaction of moaning is inflicting your pain on other people. This kind of malignant moaning, it's kind of the opposite of music, because a lot of music, like blues, is benevolent moaning that transforms pain into pleasure. I mean, that's what blues is all about. My woman don't love me no more, but I know her sister will, you know? Optimism. I think a lot of incel discourse is really just malignant moaning, right? It's not an attempt to diagnose or solve any problem. It's just a contagious expression of misery, a moan of pain that masquerades as a political agenda.
Is this starting to sound familiar to certain libertarians out there? Let's continue the segment.
Sexual Marxism, they call it. The redistribution of sex.
Oh shit, they actually believe
this.
That is so
valid.
fucked up.
Of course, they don't actually expect any of this to happen. That's not the point. So incels are kind of a universal punching bag online. It's very easy to point and laugh at them. But what's harder is to look in the mirror and notice how these exact same tendencies are rampant in our own communities. So the incel black pill is just one instance of what I call an ideology of resentment, a discourse that outwardly appears like moral or political critique, but which on examination is mainly just a resentful moan. The goal of resentment politics is not to improve conditions. In fact, the resentful person is full of contempt for any morally compromised sellouts who are attempting to enact plausible reforms. They don't want victory. They don't want power. They want to endlessly critique power, because for them, critique is an important psychological defense against feeling impotent. Shaler described it this way.
It is peculiar to ressentiment criticism that it does not seriously desire that its demands be fulfilled. It does not want to cure the evil. The evil is merely a pretext for the criticism.
What am I going to do with my eyes? I think a pink.
We're almost there.
Look. We've been doing a lot of pink looks. I love that hay fever look. As a general rule, the more radical a political community claims to be, the more likely it is to be a community of resentment. Self-styled radicals will tell you superficial.
Wait, let's rewind that last part. Explaining why she's putting on makeup during this bit is too long and besides the point. Let's rewind.
As a general rule, the more radical a political community claims to be, the more likely it is to be a community of resentment. Self-styled radicals will tell you, superficial surface reforms do not interest us. The problem must be critiqued at its root. And then the root turns out to be this universal, all-encompassing evil, right? Society itself, the system, the machine. A resentment ideologue always imagines himself to be engaged in a kind of satanic revolt against an omnipotent, omnipresent enemy. Okay, I just need to do makeup for a second. It's harder than it looks to be a makeup vlogger. Like, it's hard to talk while doing this. And nothing short of total revolution counts as any sort of victory whatsoever. We have to dismantle the entire system. Burn it all down. I guess it's pedestrian to point out that this is the revolutionary utopian equivalent of Christians awaiting the last judgment. Our kingdom is coming, comrades. Often the appeal of utopian ideology is similar to religion. It's not about healthcare, higher wages, relief from police violence. Those are actual goals that could be demanded, worked for, and achieved. Utopian ideology instead promises relief from some general malaise, alienation. And so ironically,
Okay, so that I don't know how many light bulbs went off, but when I watched that bit, that was by far the most profound bit for me because you know the whole taxation is theft meme that our libertarians like to espouse, the notion that you know, anything short of dismantling government is not enough. And in the abstract, I agree, but that also illustrates why libertarianism, as far as the main discourse, is kind of irrelevant and has been for a while. You know, I've covered this on my channel before. I have a 3-part series back when I was shaving in the bathroom that's over there, about how I'm a proud, principled non-voter. The pride part has that volume knob has dialed down a little, but it is definitely the fact that there is no candidate who truly represents my values has held up for a long time. Okay, many years. However, and I even covered this in that 3-part series. I did vote to kick Jean Charest, who was the last premier of Quebec, or one of them anyway. It was a while ago. Jean Charest got voted out in 2012, so that's when that was actually the last time I voted. And as I explained in that series, the only reason that I voted for him, that I voted in that election, was because without going into too much detail, Jean Charest had said something particularly vile at a conference. And I remember the outrage that video clip spawned. And I knew he was done right there. And I wanted to participate in the collective fuck you that for sure the province was about to give him. I voted for the party that, among the candidates that I could vote for, best represented my values. It was a new party. I knew it was a throwaway vote because the county that I live in, it's always like, almost always one of the 2 major parties that gets in. And I voted for a totally new party called Option Nationale. They got 0 seats. The founder of the party didn't get elected in his own county, and soon after went back into the private sector. That is how crushing that defeat was for that particular party. But at least I got to participate in the fucking middle finger that Quebec collectively gave to Jean Charest. But the reason that I'm bringing this up, and the reason why the clip that I just showed you reminded me of that story so viscerally, is because when I posted on Facebook that I had voted, like I had just come home from voting, and I posted on Facebook that I had voted, I was surprised at how upset my libertarian friends were with me. It was as if I had kicked down their door and taken half of their paycheck myself. I was not expecting that. And my vote was a throwaway vote, you know? It's fun and all to complain about how corrupt the system is and how the fundamental systems that are in place need to be changed. I totally agree with you. But it is, you just got to be careful to make sure that you're not using that as an excuse to just, begrudgingly moan all day and to make sure that your criticism of the system isn't the point in and of itself. Like at some point, we got to start making changes. Without going into too much detail, there's a very controversial law or policy that will be enacted in Quebec shortly. And a very small glimmer of hope that I have that I wouldn't have if I had this like Puritan principled non-voter shit is that next year is an election year. Now, this is a very faint glimmer of hope because if all three major parties support this controversial policy, then we're fucked. I can't imagine the outrage at this being big enough to put like some small new party into power again. And I said this a couple weeks ago when I talked about how Viva Fry, the Montreal litigator turned YouTuber who decided to run for parliament, if we lived in the same county and I was in a position to vote for him, I might actually vote for him. I might actually show up. It's important to not walk over dollars to pick up dimes. So what I mean by that is to pass up genuine, legitimate opportunities to enact change that are in the direction that you want to see just because you'd be compromising some high principled value. Because, yeah, I would say that, in the abstract spheres in a vacuum world, yeah, voting itself does kind of betray my principles. However, in the real world, in the very, very, very rare occasion that someone who actually represents my values is running and I'm in a position to vote for that person, to not do so would be ridiculous. And that is something that that I've been coming to terms with over the last couple of years. And it was just really, fascinating to see Contrapoints mention this philosophy or this phenomena, obviously from a leftist perspective, like, oh, the revolution is here, comrades. Replace comrades with, I don't know, meme lords or some shit. Oh, actually, speaking of meme lords, I'll bring you back to this, the levels of defense mechanisms here. Something that I noticed over here in the mature level here is humor. It's kind of a meme to talk about how useless memes are and how they don't really change anything. But not only are they very powerful psychological bullets that can like really make a message stick with people, but they're also, for the meme maker and also for the meme sharers, a nice mature way to channel this frustration, this general malaise that we feel into something that's at least more socially acceptable. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Those were my thoughts. I would be very curious to know what your thoughts are. If you like this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy this video right here. Please click on the card right here and watch the next one. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.